foundation for nearly all agriculture grown around the world. Its health and sustainability are vital for life on Earth. And yet, many home gardeners don't know much about the soil that they're planting in. Soil science can be understandably confusing. So today, let's break it down to the basics. Hi, my name is Abby from the Adventurous Homebody YouTube channel. Thank you for stopping by. To start with, let's talk about texture. Soil is made up of three main particle sizes: sand, silt, and clay. Sand is the largest. You can easily distinguish each grain apart from the others. This means that it also drains water the fastest. Think about the last time that you built a sand castle. When the sand is wet, it sticks together and makes your castle. But when it dries, it falls apart pretty quickly. Next up is silt. Silt is much smaller than sand, but when you feel it between your fingers, there's still some grittiness. The smallest particle size is clay. Clay is very small. It will feel smooth between your fingers. It's difficult for water to pass through clay. There are many combinations of soil textures, and you can find entire charts on how to tell the type of soil you have. Some plants prefer different types of soil. For example, carrots thrive in a sandy loam, which is well draining and allows their roots to grow straight with ease. On the other hand, butterfly bushes will happily grow in clay-rich soil. As a general rule of thumb, you're usually safe planting most of your garden in a mixture that is somewhere in the middle of all three of these textures. This is called a loam. It has good drainage, but there are enough of the small particles so that it doesn't dry out immediately and blow away in the wind. This is a chart showing the different classifications of soil based on what percentages of sand, silt, and clay they are made up of. Now we're going to run a simple at-home test so that you too can determine what type of soil you have. Gather a bowl full of soil from a few inches down and hang on to it because we will use this for several different tests. Following the instructions on the chart, I made a ball with the soil. It held together, but not too well. Then I tried to make a ribbon and it would not stay together. Therefore, what I have is a loamy sand. This makes sense based on how quickly this soil dries out. If you end up with a soil texture that you don't really want, don't fret. There are many amendments that can be added, like soil conditioners, compost, or even sand. Now that we know about the textures of soil, let's talk about what differentiates soil from dirt. Soil is alive. It's more than just crushed up rock minerals. Generally, soil is made up of about 45% minerals, 25% air, 25% water, and 5% organic matter. Now, 5% might not sound like that much, but it is extremely important. Organic matter, in plain words, is decomposing stuff. This could be manure, leaves, worms, and so on. Organic matter is full of microorganisms that work together to keep your soil healthy. If you were to look under a microscope at soil, it is crawling with life. In fact, 1 teaspoon of soil has about 1 billion microorganisms living in it. Parallel to this topic is a brief word on worms. Earthworms are wonderful little creatures. Not only do they help break things down, their castings also add nutrients to the soil, and their tunneling, perhaps the most overlooked aspect, adds air to the soil. So don't overlook those little guys. Now let's talk about nutrients. When you look at a bag of fertilizer or manure from the store, you might notice 3 big letters on the label, with numbers next to them. These letters are N, P, and K, which stand for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They are the 3 big macronutrients that plants need to survive and thrive, but they're not the only ones that plants need. There are also micronutrients, which plants need a little bit less of, but are still vital. Anyway, back to the fertilizer bag. The number represents the ratio of each nutrient in the bag. Some plants, for example corn, need more nitrogen than they do of the other nutrients. Having fertilizers with specific nutrient contents makes it so that you don't overfeed them on the ones that they don't need as much of. You can adjust your nutrient levels by looking at and responding how your plants are growing. This can be by their color, if they're wilting, but the best way to do this is by stopping by your local garden shop and picking up a soil test kit. For this test, I'm just using a basic macronutrient test kit. Make sure that you use your specific test kit's instructions. I'm really excited to see these results because this is actually salvaged potting soil that we got for free at the scrapyard. This works great when you're trying to fill up multiple raised beds, but it does come with the drawback that it has already been used and is most likely not in the best condition. Once we know what nutrients are lacking or in too much abundance, we can work on fixing it so that we get the best out of our veggie and flower gardens. From these tests, it looks like my soil is depleted in nitrogen and has a surplus of potassium and phosphorus. I can fix this by adding nitrogen-based fertilizers and planting nitrogen-fixing plants like legumes. Cereal crops help to absorb phosphorus, but have to be pulled out at the end of the season. As for potassium, it's recommended to pick as many of the rocks out of your soil as possible because the minerals inside the rocks often create a buildup of potassium. Then water to flush out the water-soluble potassium in the soil. The last topic today is on soil pH. pH measures how acidic or basic something is. If you've ever had a pool and used a pool test kit to measure the water's pH, this is very similar. Hydrogen ion concentration determines where on the pH scale your soil is. But to keep it simple, the lower the pH number, the more acidic it is. The higher the number, the more alkaline it is. 6 to 6.5 on the scale is pretty neutral. Most plants like to be around 6 to 7. It's always a good idea, though, to look into the specific plant that you're looking to grow. Because, for example, blueberries thrive in a really acidic soil. Now to do a pH test on this soil. This is a really basic test that just mixes a tiny bit of soil with water and a capsule of reactive chemicals. You give it a shake, let it settle for a minute, and voila, you get your results. This sample ended up being really high. It was darker than the highest color strip, and that means that I need to work on adding a little bit more acidity into the soil to make it more on the neutral side. You can do this with different fertilizers, peat moss, or sulfur, to name a few methods. Thanks for taking the time to nerd out with me about soil. I'll link some helpful resources down below. And if you have any gardening questions or ideas for future videos, let me know in the comments. Until next time, happy gardening!